Dear listener, welcome. You have crossed the threshold of the old brownstone on West 35th, but tonight the orchids sleep, and the great man has consented, grudgingly, to leave his greenhouse. We are bound for the Golden Horn, where fog coils like cigarette smoke, and the ferries glide between two continents as though the world itself were undecided. Chapter 1. The Telegram from the Bosphorus. The brass plate outside the old brownstone on West 35th Street gleamed like a new nickel when I gave it a final swipe with the chamois. It was a crisp October morning in 1947, the kind that makes a man glad to be alive and gainfully employed by the most immovable object in Manhattan. Nero Wolfe. The orchids upstairs were drinking in the pale sun. Fritz was humming over poached eggs. And the world, for once, seemed content to leave us alone. Then the boy from Western Union shoved a yellow envelope under the door with all the delicacy of a subway turnstile. I picked it up. The paper was thick, the ink still damp. A Turkish stamp crimson crescent, and star-stared back at me like a drop of blood. I carried it into the office. Wolfe was at his desk, a mountain in a yellow silk shirt, frowning over the New York Times crossword. He did not look up. "Telegram," I said. "Return to sender. I'm occupied. You'll want to see this one." He extended 2 fingers the size of breakfast sausages. I placed the envelope in them. He slit it with the gold knife he keeps for such emergencies, unfolded the flimsy, and read aloud in that rumbling baritone that could silence a courtroom. "Urgent stop murder on Shehir Ferry. Stop victim American diplomat. Philip Greer stop need Wolfe. Stop will pay double plus all expenses. Stop Colonel Refik Altan, Istanbul police." Wolfe's lips pursed as though he had tasted a spoiled oyster. He handed the paper back. "Archie, inform the State Department we are unavailable." "Unavailable," I said. "The man's offering double of nothing is nothing. Istanbul is 6,000 miles away. 5,983 if you fly TWA to Paris and Panam the rest. 41 hours, 2 stops, 1 refueling in the Azores." He glared. "I do not fly, I do not float, I do not budge." I opened my mouth to argue. Double is double. But the telephone rang. I lifted the receiver. "Goodwin, resident of Nero Wolfe. Archie speaking, Archie." Darling, came the voice of Lily Rowan, smooth as a martini and twice as dangerous. "Tell your fat genius to pack his trunks. My cousin Philip has been murdered." I felt the room tilt a degree. Lily's cousins were usually diplomats or debutantes, not corpses. "Details," I said. "Stabbed on a ferry between Europe and Asia. The newspapers are howling, the embassy is frantic, and the Turkish police have specifically asked for Nero Wolfe." Wolfe's eyes narrowed to slits. He had heard every word. The man's ears are sharper than a switchblade. Lily continued. "Philip was cultural attaché. He was carrying something valuable. Don't know what, but if you don't go, Archie, I will never forgive you." She hung up before I could negotiate terms. Wolfe leaned back. The chair groaned in protest. "Confound the woman! Confound her cousin! Confound the entire Levant boss!" I said, "We're going. We are not, we are. Because if we don't, Lily will camp on the doorstep with a brass band and a photographer from Life magazine. And because double is double, and because I have never seen the Bosphorus." He closed his eyes. A silence stretched long enough to grow roots. Then, pack for 2 weeks. Bring the Times Atlas, the Baedeker, and the medical kit. I despise surprises, I grinned. The game, as always, was afoot. Pause 3 beats. Typewriter clacks. By noon I had booked passage on the SS Excalibur to Naples. then rail to Brindisi, and the Turkish Maritime Line steamer Ankara across the Aegean. Wolfe refused airplanes on principle. He claims the upper atmosphere is unfit for human respiration, and I did not argue. 41 hours in a plane versus 14 days at sea. The sea won. I telephoned Saul Panzer and told him to mind the office. I telephoned Fritz and instructed him to freeze the beer. I telephoned Lily and told her we were en route. She laughed, low and satisfied. At 2 o'clock, the mail brought a second envelope, heavier, sealed with crimson wax. Inside, a single photograph, glossy, 8 by 10. Philip Greertall, blonde, smiling, stood on a ferry deck with his arm around a veiled woman. Her eyes were dark, enormous, older than sin. On the back, in Greer's handwriting, "If anything happens to me, ask Melike." Wolfe studied the picture through his magnifying glass. Melike, he murmured. Turkish, diminutive of Malik, meaning queen. The veil is Yemeni local silk, hand-dyed. The ferry is a Shehir Hatlara vessel, Kadıköy line. Note the life ring, Pashabahce. I whistled. You got all that from one snapshot. I got the Pashabahce from the schedule in yesterday's Herald Tribune. The rest is elementary. He returned the photograph. Archie obtained dossiers on Mr. Greer, Miss Rowan's cousin, and on Colonel Refik Altan. And on this Melike, if she exists outside a harem tale, I reached for the phone. Scene transition, steam whistle, gulls, the slap of water against the pier. We sailed on the tide of October 23rd. The Excalibur was a floating palace mahogany panelling, white-jacketed stewards, a string quartet soaring away at Debussy. Wolfe took the royal suite, installed his special mattress, and refused to leave it except for meals. I explored. On the second night out, I found a man watching me from the bar. He was thin, hawk-nosed, smoked Turkish cigarettes that smelled of applewood. His suit was Savile Row, his shoes handmade, his eyes the colour of wet slate. Mr. Goodwin, he said in English polished at Oxford. Colonel Refik Altan sends his compliments, and a warning. I set down my scotch. Worn away, the Bosphorus is deep. Secrets sink quickly. Some men ask too many questions. He slid an envelope across the bar. Inside, a brass button engraved AA Alpha Omega. Found beside the body, he said. A gift or a threat. Choose. Then he was gone, melted into the smoke and violin strings. I pocketed the button and went to Wolfe's suite. He examined it under his lamp. Greek letters, fraternity, cult, smuggling ring. The metal is gold-plated base, Istanbul manufacture. The thread is silk, red. Note the blood trace human type O. How do you know it's blood? Because I am not an imbecile. He rang for Fritz's emergency kit, dabbed the button with benzidone, and watched the blue reaction bloom. Archie, he said, we are not travelling to solve a murder. We are travelling to prevent a war. I waited. Philip Greer was no mere cultural attaché. He was courier for the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency. The item he carried, whatever it was worth more than double our fee. Someone killed him for it. Someone else wants us to fail. He leaned back. Tomorrow we reach Naples. Cable Lily Rowan. Tell Melike we are coming. I cabled subtle cliffhanger. That night the ship's wireless brought a final message, crackling across the Atlantic like a ghost. Melike is dead stop. Do not trust Altan stop. Unsigned. Wolfe read it once, folded it into a perfect square, and placed it in his vest pocket. Archie, he said, pour the Remia 37. We have 13 days to determine which of our clients is lying, I poured. The wine was dark as the sea outside the porthole. Natural pause. Ship's bell rings 8 times community hook. Dear listener, pause here. A diplomat dead. a veiled woman, perhaps murdered, a colonel who warns and withholds, a button stained with blood. Where would you begin? Leave your theory in the comments below. We read them all. Chapter 2. The City That Straddles Two Worlds. The Ankara nosed into the Golden Horn, under a sky the colour of Turkish coffee, heavy with the promise of rain. It was November the 7th, 1947, 14 days since the telegram, and the world had narrowed to this. A city that refused to choose between east and west, minarets stabbing the fog like accusations, ferries churning the strait as if to drown the arguments. I stood at the rail, collar turned up against the damp, watching Istanbul unfold like a hand of cards. The Topkapi Palace brooding on its hill, the Galata Tower leaning into the wind, and everywhere the call to prayer weaving through the horns and hawkers. Wolfe remained in his cabin until the gangway was firm. He emerged only when the porter swore on his mother's grave that no vehicle would so much as jolt. We took rooms at the Pera Palace Hotel, that grand relic of the Orient Express era, where Agatha Christie had once penned her poisons, and Ataturk had dreamed his republic. Wolfe demanded the corner suite in number 101, once occupied by the great man himself, with a balcony overlooking the Bosphorus. He surveyed the view through his opera glasses, as though it were a particularly insolent crossword puzzle. "Archie," he said, lowering them at last, "this city is a paradox. It spans two continents, yet it cannot decide if it is mosque or martini. Inform Colonel Altan we are arrived. And order Raki. I require fortification." I telephoned the desk. The clerk's English was fractured but eager. "Yes, Effendi!" Raki with mezza, olives black as sin, feta sharp as regret. Colonel Altan Hey waits at key, like hawk. Half an hour later, we descended to the lobby, where a crowd of bellhops parted like the Red Sea for Moses in spats. Outside, the air was thick with the scent of roasting chestnuts and diesel, and there stood Colonel Refik Altan, thin as a minaret, hawk-nosed, with a moustache trimmed to razor precision and eyes that missed nothing. He smoked a cigarette in a long ivory holder, the smoke curling like a genie's warning. His uniform was British-cut Sandhurst, no doubt with a Sam Brown belt that gleamed like conscience. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, extending a hand that was cool and dry as parchment. "Mr. Goodwin." A pleasure shadowed by sorrow. "The Bosphorus welcomed you, but she bites those who linger." Wolfe shook hands with the minimum exertion required by civility. "Colonel, your telegram was economical. Shall we dispense with pleasantries and proceed to facts? I abhor economies of truth." Altan's smile was a crescent moonsharp, fleeting. "Facts, then. But first, the car. My driver knows shortcuts through the traffic. Istanbul is a lover, passionate but jealous of your time. The car was a pre-war Mercedes, black as the strait at midnight, with curtains drawn against prying eyes. We slid into the back. Altan took the jump seat, facing us like a judge. The Drivera silent giant with a neck like a wrestler's eased into the snarl of Tunal Square, where trams clanged and vendors hawked simit rings golden as wedding bands. Philip Greer Altan began, lighting another cigarette. American 34, cultural attaché to the U.S. Embassy. Posted here 6 months. Fine man spoke Turkish like a janissary. Collected icons like a pasha collects wives. Stabbed at dawn on the Pashabahce Ferry Kadıköy line. Boarded at Eminönü 0612. Found at 0627, slumped against the aft railing. Single thrust between 4th and 5th ribs, straight to the heart. Blade, Yemeni dagger, Curved like a scorpion's tail, local make, no prints, no weapon recovered. Wolfe's eyes were half closed, but I knew that look, the gears turning, oiling, witnesses. Altan exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. 37 passengers, 12 crew. The ferry runs every 20 minutes, crowded even at dawn with commuters, fishmongers, office boys. All claim the fog was thick as bolter that fermented drink, you know. Visibility 10 feet. No one saw the killer. Or so they say. I leaned forward. The button I received, A.O. Yours? He nodded once, found snagged on the railing, inches from the body. Brass, engraved Greek, odd for a Turkish blade. I thought it a calling card. Sent it via a mutual acquaintance on your ship, Wolfe grunted. Mutual. You have agents in Connaught. A few. The war taught us commerce in shadows. Altan's voice dropped. Greer was no ordinary diplomat, Mr. Wolfe. He carried dispatches NATO precursors, whispers of alliances. If his death was assassination, it was, Wolfe said flatly. A random stabber does not vanish in fog without a splash. Motive? Altan hesitated, glancing at the driver's reflection. Greer quarrelled with a woman the night before. Melike de Mirwidow, antiques dealer in Galata. Veiled, volatile. They were seen arguing at the Chichek Passage, that flower passage off Istiklal. She sells Byzantine relics. He bought many. Perhaps a lover's spat turned fatal, or a deal soured, I suggested. Icons smuggled, war loot. Altan's eyes flicked to me, appraising, possible. The war left treasures buried like landmines. But Melike is no killer. She wept when I questioned her genuine tears. Salt on silk Wolfe's lip curled. Tears are the cheapest prop in the theatre of innocence. The timetable? Altan produced a folded sheet from his breast pocket official, stamped with the ferry company's seal, Greer's, from his coat. Annotated, meet MH06 Torn 20 aft bench, M for Melike, presumably. He arrived early, paced. Fog rolled in from the Black Sea. Then nothing. The car lurched over a pothole. Wolfe braced himself with a glare that could curdle milk. Take us to the boat, Colonel. I require the scene. Altan shook his head. Impounded at the pier in Üsküdar. But, Mr. Wolfe, you do not board ferries. Your reputation precedes you like a herald, I do not. Wolfe agreed. Mr. Goodwin does. Archie, note the blood pattern, the railings, the benches. Catalogue every anomaly. I nodded. Got it, boss. Anomalies and all. Pause 2 beats. Car door slams. Ferry whistle echoes. The Pashabache lay moored at the Asian side dock, a white ghost scarred by salt and time, her hull rising and falling with the tide like a sleeper's breath. The air hummed with the low throb of diesels from sister ships. And gulls wheeled overhead, screaming for scraps. Altan led us aboard. Wolfe demurred at the gangway, settling into a canvas chair on the quay with a thermos of tea from the hotel. Proceed, he rumbled, and do not dawdle. This damp is an assault on the sinuses. The deck was scrubbed, but not scrubbed enough. A dark comma of blood lingered near the starboard rail, stubborn as guilt. I knelt, gloved hands from my kit tracing the outline. Single pool, I called to Altan. No drag marks. He dropped straight down, no struggle, or the fog hid it. Altan nodded, pointing. Here the railing knot, where the button caught. Silk thread red snagged deep. I teased it free, a torn scrap, no bigger than a postage stamp, edges frayed like a lie unraveling. Red silkomani weave, if Altan was right. Clue number 1. Nearby, the aft bench-varnished oak bolted firm. I ran my fingers along the underside. Nothing but the slats. One, lifted with a click, false-bottomed, a smuggler's trick. Inside, a brass button, twin to the one from the ship. AO, and etched on the wood, PGM trust no Greeks. Archie, Wolfe bellowed from the quay, voice carrying like thunder over the water. Report! I vaulted the rail, landing light, silk scrap, red button match, and a hidey hole in the bench with a note. Trust no Greeks. Greer's initials. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Greeks, Papadopoulos, the physician Lily mentioned in her cable? Altan stiffened. Dr. Elias Papadopoulos, Greek Orthodox, practices in Beyoğlu. Treated Greer for malaria last month. Cufflinks with AO his fraternity, Alpha Omega, from Athens 29. Harmless men do not litter crime scenes with initials, Wolfe said. Colonel, summon him, and the woman, and the captain. We convene at the hotel, Winter Garden, 4 o'clock. Tea and truth. Altan saluted crisply. As you command, but beware, Mr. Wolfe Istanbul's truths have teeth. He departed in a swirl of smoke and salutes, leaving us to the ferry's shadow. Scene transition. Hotel fountain trickles, palm fronds rustle. Distant adarn the Pera Palace's winter garden was an oasis of tile and citrus. Fountains bubbling like gossip. Lanterns casting pools of amber light. The air heavy with orange blossom and intrigue. Wolfe had commandeered a corner table, ringed by potted ferns like sentinels. A samovar steamed. Reiki glasses sweated beads of condensation. I arranged the clues on a velvet tray, silk, button, note. The suspects arrived in 2s and 3s, ushered by bellhops who vanished like vapours. First, Captain Kamal Arslan, ferrymaster for 30 salt-crusted years. Broad as a barrel, face weathered like the deck planks, uniform stiff with starch and suspicion. He saluted the air. Mr. Wolfe, a tragedy. I found him slumped, eyes open to the gulls. Knife gone with the fog, Wolfe inclined his head. Captain, you're cruany with Greek ties, smuggling habits. Arslan's laugh was a bark. Greeks, on my boat. I run a clean line, Effendi. Passengers carry secrets. We carry them across next. Dr. Elias Papadopoulos, slight and silver-haired, cufflinks winking AO under his tweed jacket. He clutched a worn leather satchel, smelling of iodoform and old books. Mr. Wolfe, I am no murderer. Philip was my patient quinine for the fever, nothing more. The button, a gift from my university days, lost it weeks ago. Wolfe's gaze pinned him. Lost or planted? Your hands tremble, doctor. Malaria or memory? Papadopoulos flushed. Rheumatism and grief, then. Miss Dorothy.Pym, American missionary, 28 and angular as a prayer book. Saddle shoes scuffed from Turkish trails, notebook bulging with sermons and ferry schedules. I prayed for Philip's soul on that very deck, she said, voice quavering. The fog was God's veil, perhaps to spare us the horror, or to conceal it, Wolfe murmured. Miss Pym, your timetable's obsessive. Planning a passage or plotting one? She clutched her cross. Passages eternal, Mr. Wolfe. This world is but a ferry to the next last. Melike Demir. Pro. Mehlike. Gliding in like smoke from a hookah. Veiled in crimson silky ameni, matching the scrape ice like polished onyx behind the gauze. Widow at 30. Owner of an antiques shop in the shadow of Galata Tower. She did not sit. Philip was my light, she said, voice a melody laced with thorns. He bought my icons, yes, but love, not loot. The notask Melike meant for help, not suspicion. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Madame, the silk in your scarf matches the thread on the button. Coincidence or confederacy? Her laugh was silk tearing. Coincidence. Istanbul drowns in red silk, but the Greeks they covet what I sell. Omega is a shadow in the bazaar, buying Byzantine gold with Bolshevik rubles. The room stilled. Arslan muttered a curse. Papadopoulos paled. Dot whispered a prayer. Wolfe raised his glass. To shadows, then. Ladies, gentlemen, truth floats. Lies sink. We shall see who surfaces. As they filed out, a boy barefoot, 12, eyes sharp as pickpockets' fingers slipped me a note. Saw the veiled lady argue. Saw the knife flash. Midnight, hammam by the tower. Come alone. Hassan, it was signed. Dear listener, pause. The tale. A colonel with secrets. A captain who sees fog. A doctor with trembling hands. A missionary with maps. A widow in red silk. Who harbours the killer? Speculate below. Your voice joins the chorus. Chapter 3. The Boy Who Saw Too Much. The Galata Tower loomed black against a moon the colour of tarnished silver. Midnight in Beolu smelled of grilled mackerel, roki, and the faint copper of old blood. I left the Peripalace on foot, collar up, 38 snug under my armpit. Wolfe had grunted approval from his suite. Go, Archie, but return with facts, not folklore. Waited in the shadow of the hammam's arched door, a wraith in a patched sweater. His bare feet made no sound on the wet cobblestones. You came, he whispered. Good. Americans keep promises, Turks keep knives. He led me through a side gate into steam thick as lies. Baths were closed, but a single lantern glowed over the marble gubek to show the hot bellystone where sultans once lounged. A man reclined there now, scar zigzagging his cheek like lightning frozen mid-flash. Gold tooth, silk robe, Kyrios Omega. Mr. Goodwin, he said, voice oiled with Athens and menace. $5,000 for the icon Greer hid. No questions, no police. I kept my hands visible. I'm a detective, not a fence. His laugh steamed. Detectives die curious. Greer did. Hassan tugged my sleeve. Show him, Effendi. I produced the bench slat from my coat wrapped in oilskin, the false bottom pried open. Inside, not the icon, but a rolled microfilm and a lock of black hair tied with red silk. Omega's eyes narrowed. The hair is Melike's. The film NATO troop movements, worth more than gold. He reached. I stepped back. Steel flashed. I ducked, felt the breeze of the blade kiss my ear. Hassan shrieked, hurled a copper ladle clank against Omega's temple. The Greek staggered. I tackled him into the scalding pool. Water exploded. Silk robe billowed like a jellyfish. I pinned his wrist until the knife clattered on marble. Talk, I growled. He spat blood and Turkish. Melike killed Greer. Lovers' quarrel. She hired me to retrieve the film. I refused the murder. Hassan translated the curses. He lies. I saw her on the ferry veil lifted, eyes wild. She stabbed, then dropped the knife overboard. Omega laughed through pink bubbles. The boy steals wallets, not truth. I bound his wrists with my belt, hauled him dripping to the changing room. There, a vanity case monogrammed MD Malik Demir. Inside, lipstick, discontinued 1945 shade Pere Rouge, and a second Yemeni dagger, blood dried in the curve. Clue number 4. I pocketed the case. Hassan, you just earned a year's tuition. He grinned, gap-toothed. American school. First, we visit Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe was awake, yellow pajamas tented over his expanse, reading a treatise on Ottoman poisons by lamplight. I dumped Omega still dripping onto the Bokhara rug. Hassan perched on the ottoman like a sparrow. Report, Wolfe commanded. I laid out the prizes, microfilm, hair, vanity case, dagger. Omega claims Melike killed Greer over the film. Hassan says he saw her do it. The lipstick matches a smudge on Greer's collar Pere Rouge, black market only. The hair is hers. I'd bet my bonus. Wolfe examined the dagger under his glass. Blood type Ogreer's. The curve matches the wound. The hair microscopic root sheath intact. Recent. He turned to Omega. You refused murder but accepted retrieval. Who pays you? Omega sneered. Ask your Colonel Altan. He introduced us. Wolfe's eyebrows ascended like elevators. Altan? Altan sells secrets the way bakers sell simit. Greer discovered it. Melike was the go-between lover to both. Hutton piped up. I followed Melike after the ferry. She met the Colonel at the Spice Bazaar. Gave him a package. He gave her gold. Wolfe leaned back. Archie, the timetable marginalia read it again. I unfolded Greer's sheet. Meet Emzo 6, 20 aft bench. Trust no one. Film in icon. If I die, expose Altan. Silence pooled, thick as the hammam steam. Wolfe sighed. The icon was a decoy. The film, the prize. Melike stabbed Greer to silence him, then framed the Greeks with the button. Altan orchestrated the fog literal and figurative. Omega was the clean-up crew. Rang for Fritz, coffee for the boy, brandy for Mr. Goodwin, and cable Saul Panzer. Dig Altan's war record. Urgent. Omega struggled against the belt. You cannot prove I can, Wolfe said, and will. At dawn, in the Winter Garden, all parties. The cistern revelation awaits. Subtle cliffhanger. The telephone rang shrill, insistent. Altan's voice, tight. Mr. Wolfe, the Pashabacha is. Delayed for maintenance. Come at once. The icon has vanished. Wolfe replaced the receiver. Maintenance, a euphemism for panic. Archie, take the boy. Guard the film. Tomorrow we sink the rats. Pause 3 beats. Community hook. Dear listener, pause here. A colonel unmasked. A widow's dagger. A boy's eyes in the fog. Microfilm worth empires. Who falls at dawn? Speculate below. Chapter 4. The Winter Garden at Dawn. The Pera Palace Winter Garden was a glass cathedral of palms and silence at 05:45. Lanterns guttered low, throwing long shadows across the mosaic floor. A single samovar hissed like a conspirator. Wolfe sat enthroned at the round table, yellow robe belted tight, eyes half-lidded but lethal. I stood behind him, 38 holstered but unbuttoned. Hassan perched on a stool, clutching a glass of iron like a talisman. They arrived in order, summoned by Altan's urgent cables. First, Melika Demir, veil discarded, hair loose and wild, eyes red-rimmed but defiant. She wore a charcoal suit that cost more than a ferry captain's pension. You woke me for theatrics, Mr. Wolfe. Sit, Wolfe said. Truth is impatient. Next, Colonel Refik Altan, uniform immaculate despite the hour, cigarette already lit. He surveyed the room like a chess master counting pieces. Mr. Wolfe, the icon is missing from the ferry safe. This meeting is premature. Premature, Wolfe echoed. Murder ripens quickly in fog. Sit, Captain Arslan stomped in. Cap under arm, face storm cloud grey. My boat is held hostage by your games. The Union will strike after the revelation, Wolfe said. Sit, Dr. Elias Papadopoulos shuffled. Satchel clutched to chest. Cufflinks AUU winking nervously. I treated a child with diphtheria at 4. Must I be here? You must, Wolfe said. Miss Dorothy Dot. Pym entered last, Bible in one hand, ferry timetable in the other. Her saddle shoes squeaked on the tile. The Lord detests false witness, Mr. Wolfe. I pray you speak only truth. Wolfe waited until the chairs scraped into a perfect circle. Then he placed the evidence on the velvet tray. Microfilm, lock of hair, vanity case, bloody dagger, Greer's timetable. Philip Greer, he began, voice rolling like distant thunder, was no mere attaché. He carried NATO embryonic Planstrup dispositions, Black Sea ports, Soviet infiltration routes. The icon was a blind, the microfilm, the heart. Someone here killed him for it. Altan stubbed his cigarette. Speculation. Where is proof? Wolfe lifted the dagger. This bloody Yemeni, curved, blood type O. Found in Madame Demir's vanity case. The lipstick Pere Rouge, discontinued 1945, matches the smudge on Greer's collar. The hair is hers. Root sheath confirms it was cut, not fallen. Melike's hand flew to her throat. Philip gave me that lock as a lover's token. The dagger is for protection. Every widow carries one. The lipstick, I bought it yesterday in the Bazaar Lyre. Hassan piped. I saw you on the ferry. Veil up, eyes crazy. You stabbed him, wiped the blade on your scarf, dropped it overboard, leaned forward. The boy is a thief. His word is wind. Wolfe ignored him. Captain Arslan, your log shows the Pashabahce. Delayed departure, 3 minutes at 06:17. Why? Arslan shrugged. Fog signal. Routine, Wolfe repeated. Yet the fog report from the Galata Meteorological Station records visibility 100 yards. No delay warranted. You held the ferry so Madame de Mere could board unseen at the midpoint Pier Karakoi, not Eminonu. Arslan's jaw worked soundlessly. Wolfe turned to Papadopoulos. Doctor, your cufflink button was found at the scene. Explain. The doctor's voice trembled. Two lost it treating Greer 2 weeks prior. He clutched my sleeve during fever. It tore free. Convenient, Wolfe said, but the thread is fresh silk, red, matching Madame's scarf. Planted. Pym gasped. Planted? By whom? By the orchestrator, Wolfe said, eyes locking on Altan. Colonel, you hired Kyrios Omega to retrieve the film. You introduced him to Madame de Mere. You sold secrets to the Soviets. Greer discovered it. Melike was your courier and your lover. When Greer threatened exposure, she killed him on your order. The icon vanished because you removed it last night to cover your tracks. Altan's hand slid toward his holster. I drew first. Easy, Colonel. Hands on the table, Melike laughed sharp. Broken. You think I killed for him? Philip was leaving me for America, for safety. Refik promised marriage, position. I stabbed Philip to keep him silent, yes. But Refika planned it from the start. The button was his idea. Frame the Greeks. Muddy the waters. Altan surged to his feet. Treasonous bitch! Hassan darted, kicked the colonel's shin. Altan stumbled. I clipped him behind the ear with the .38 butt. He crumpled like wet paper. Wolfe exhaled. Captain Arslan, you delayed the ferry for gold. Doctor, you are innocent save negligence. Miss Pym, your prayers are answered, justice surfaces. Madame de Mere, you will confess in full to the American consul. The microfilm returns to Washington. The boy receives a reward $500 and a visa if he chooses. Melike stared at the dagger, then at her hands. Philip's eyes, she whispered. They stayed open. Accusing pause 3 beats. Fountain resumes its murmur. Altan groaned, stirring. I bound his wrists with his own belt. Wolfe Roseslow, majestic. Archie, cable the embassy. Spy ring broken. Killer confesses. Film secure. Inform Lily Rowan. Her cousin is avenged. We sail on the Ankara at noon. Pym closed her Bible. The Lord's ferry runs on time. Wolfe almost smiled. Indeed, subtle cliffhanger. As we escorted Melike to the lobby, a bellhop pressed a note into my hand. Film is duplicate. Real one with Omega. He escapes tonight. Hassan was gone. Community hook, dear listener, pause the dawn. A widow weeps. A colonel falls. A boy vanishes with the true prize. The game ended, or merely moved to deeper water. Speculate below. Chapter 5. The Cistern Revelation. The Yerabatan Serdab 6th century cistern beneath the city lay black, and echoing at 0317. Columns rose from the water like petrified giants, their capitals carved with Medusa's upside-down glare. Lanterns bobbed on feluccas, throwing gold ripples across the vaulted ceiling. Wolfe had hired the entire underground lake for the finale. Claiming acoustics aid confession, I rowed the lead boat. Hassan returned at dusk, eyes wide with apology, perched at the bow, clutching a waterproof pouch. We had the real microfilm. The duplicate had been Omega's decoy, slipped to Altan as insurance. Hutton had lifted it from the Greek's pocket during the hammam scuffle, then vanished to protect it. Smart kid. The suspects arrived by separate boats, guided by silent oarsmen. Melike, wrists bound with silk cord, veil gone, face pale as the marble. Altan cuffed in steel, uniform stripped to shirt sleeves, cigarette denied. Omega, trussed like a Christmas goose, scar livid under the lantern. Captain Arslan, Dr. Papadopoulos, Dot Pimiak in their own craft, ferried like souls across the Styx. Wolfe reclined on cushions in the central felucca, a pasha dispensing doom. The water lapped the hulls in soft applause. "Welcome," he boomed, voice bouncing off the brick arches. "Here, where emperors stored water and secrets, we store truth. Mr. Greer's microfilm authentic, not the forgery Colonel Altan planted is in my possession. It details Soviet purchases of NATO plans, routed through Istanbul. Names, dates, bribes, including yours." Colonel spat into the water. "Lies. You have nothing." Wolfe lifted the canister. "Shall I project it on the ceiling?" "The acoustics are superb," Melike's voice cracked. "Refik, tell them I acted alone." "Silence," Altan hissed. Omega laughed, hoarse. "She stabbed Greer on your order, Colonel. I have the wire recording hidden in the icon's false halo. Hassan has it now." Hassan held up a second pouch smeller, brass-rimmed. Wolfe nodded. "Play it, boy." Hassan wound the tiny mechanism. Altan's voice, tinny but unmistakable, crackled. "Melike, darling, Q20, aft bench. One thrust. Fog will hide us. Omega cleans up. The film is ours." The cistern fell silent save for dripping water. Dot Pim crossed herself. Papadopoulos whispered a Greek prayer. Arslan stared at his boots. Wolfe continued. Captain Arslan delayed the ferry for 200 gold liras paid by Madame de Mere, funded by Colonel Altan. "Doctor, your button was stolen from your clinic weeks ago. The silk thread attached later. Miss Pym, your sermons were coded drops for the Americans. Greer was your contact. You prayed for his soul because you failed to save his life." Dot's eyes filled. "I begged him to abort the meeting. He refused." Melike lunged toward Altan, cords cutting her. "Wrists, you promised me safety. You promised," I caught her, gentle but firm. "Easy. Justice doesn't need your help." Altan's face twisted. "The Soviets offered a new world. America meddles, Turkey starves between empires. I chose survival." Wolfe's lip curled. "You chose treason. Mr. Omega, your role?" The Greek shrugged. "Middleman. I buy, I sell, no politics." But Altan double-crossed me, kept the real film. Paid in counterfeit. Hassan spoke up. I swapped them back. Omega's fake is with the police now. This, he tapped the pouches, the truth. Wolfe addressed the circle. Confessions align. Motive, greed masked as ideology. Method, lover's blade, officer's delay, smuggler's cleanup. Opportunity, 15 minutes of fog. The Pasha Bahce was the perfect stage he signaled. From the shadows, 2 U.S. Marine Embassy guards emerged in a third boat. Colonel Altan, Madame de Mere, Mr. Omega arrested for murder, espionage conspiracy. Captain Arslan accessory, bribery, Dr. Miss Pym witnesses. The boy hero Altan struggled as the Marines cuffed him anew. "You cannot touch me. Diplomatic immunity revoked," a new voice said. Lily Rowan's cousin Philip Greer's successor. Attaché Harlan, Wade stepped from the darkness, papers in hand, State Department warrant. Extradition immediate, Melike wept silently. Omega cursed in 3 languages. Wolfe raised a glass of raki smuggled in a thermos to Philip Greer, and to Istanbul city of two worlds, keeper of none. The lanterns dimmed, boats poled away, carrying the guilty into the city's veins. Pause 4 beats, water drips echo. Back at the Pera Palace, dawn painted the Bosphorus rose and gold. Wolfe packed with Fritz's precision. I counted the reward. Double fee, expenses, plus a bonus from the embassy. Hassan stood at the door, new shoes shining, visa in pocket. "Mr. Goodwin, I go to America." "First class," I said. Wolfe insists. Wolfe grunted from the bedroom. "The orchids miss me, and the brownstone. Confound this city beautiful, but exhausting." I handed him the Times Atlas. "Homeward bound, boss. Via Naples, no ferries." He almost smiled. "Archie, pour the Remia when we dock. We have earned it." Subtle cliffhanger. As the anchorer pulled from the pier, a final telegram slid under our cabin door. "Film secure. Stop but Greer's last note found in Icon Halo. Stop the traitor has a twin. Stop Wade." Wolfe read it, folded it, tucked it away. "Archie," he said, "the game is never over community hook. Dear listener, the cistern's echo fades. A spy ring broken, a boy saved, but a twin walks free. Who wears Altan's face? Speculate below. The orchids wait." Chapter 6. The Twin in the Brownstone. The SS Excalibur docked at Pier 90 on a December morning, sharp enough to slice bread. Snow flurried over the Hudson like confetti at a funeral. We had been gone 41 days. The orchids had sulked, Fritz had fretted, and Saul Panzer had kept the office warmer than a poker game. Wolfe disembarked last, wrapped in a camel hair coat the size of a circus tent, leaning on my arm as though the gangway were a tightrope. "Archie," he said, inhaling the cold American air, "never again. The Bosphorus is a siren. I prefer my sirens in bottles." I hailed a cab. The driver took one look at Wolfe and swallowed his whistle. Back on West 35th, the brownstone smelled of pine from Fritz's discreet Christmas wreath and the richer perfume of 10,000 orchids upstairs. Wolfe inspected his plants like a general reviewing troops, grunted approval, and lowered himself into the custom chair that had groaned in his absence. "Beer," he commanded. Fritz brought 2 chilled bottles. I took one. The mail was a landslide. Bills, Christmas cards, and 1 crimson envelope sealed with Turkish wax. I slit it. Inside, a single photograph kernel, Refik Altan, smiling, arm around an identical man in US Army uniform. On the back, in Greer's handwriting, "If I die, the twin is in New York." Stops the ring. P.G. Datscher studied it through his glass. "Archie, the embassy cable from Whodunit again." I unfolded the yellow sheet. "Altan claims twin brother in US Army intelligence. Stop name, Major Refi. Altan stop station Governor's Island. Stop verify urgent stop." Wolfe's lips pursed. "Governor's Island, Fort J. Convenient for ferry traffic to Manhattan. Summon Saul and Lily Rowan. We convene tonight." By 8, the office was crowded. Saul Panzerline, quiet, eyes like a ferret sat on the couch. Lily Rowan, in emerald velvet, perched on the desk edge, legs crossed, cigarette glowing. Major Refi Altan taller than his brother. Mustache clipped American style stood at parade rest, cap in hand. 2 Marine MPs flanked the door, courtesy of Attaché Wade. Wolfe occupied his chair like a throne. "Major," he began, "your twin claims you are the architect of the spy ring. He says you fed NATO plans to Moscow via Istanbul. Greer discovered it. You ordered the murder, framed your brother to take the fall." The Major's face was stone. "My brother is a liar and a traitor. I have served honourably since 42. Pearl Harbor, Normandy." The bulge slid a folder across the desk. service record checks, but bank deposits don't. $50,000 untraceable, wired to a Cayman account in your name. Last deposit, day Greer died. Lily exhaled smoke. Philip mentioned a ghost officer in his last letter to me. Said the traitor wore stars, but spoke with a Turkish accent. The Major's jaw tightened. Fabrications Wolfe lifted the photograph. Greer's last note, the twin in New York. You arrived on Governor's Island 3 weeks before the murder. Convenient leave to consult on Black Sea defences, I stepped forward. Major, your boots Turkish leather hand-stitched in Beyoğlu, same as the Colonel's, and the ferry timetable in your quarters annotated in Greer's hand. Meet R06, 20, aft bench. R for ref, I glanced at the MPs. I can explain. No need, Wolfe said. The microfilm reel 1 contains your signature on the transfer orders. Hassan delivered it to the embassy yesterday. The ring funneled funds through Maliki's antiques shop. You laundered them as cultural grants. Greer confronted you on the ferry. You stabbed him, planted your brother's button stolen during a staged arrest in Istanbul. The fog was your ally, the delay your brother's gift. The Major's hand twitched toward his sidearm. I was faster. Hands on head, Major. Slowly he complied. Eyes burning. You think this ends with me? The Soviets have deeper roots. Roots rot when exposed, Wolfe said. Archie, the cuffs I snapped them on. The MPs took custody. Lily stubbed her cigarette. Philip's avenged. Finally, Saul gathered his papers. Fees in the mail, Mr. Wolfe, plus hazard bonus. Wolfe nodded. Acceptable. Pause 3 beats, clock strikes 9. Later, in the kitchen, Fritz served roast goose and chestnut stuffing. Hassan via transatlantic call from the embassy accepted Wolfe's offer. Full scholarship to Horace Mann, then Columbia. The boy's voice cracked with wonder. Wolfe raised his glass. To absent friends, and to twins may they never share a womb again, I drank. The Remia 37 was perfect. Outside, snow muffled the city. Inside, the orchids bloomed defiantly. The doorbell rang once, sharp. I opened to a boy in Western Union yellow. Another crimson envelope. Inside, a brass button. Ah! And a note in Greer's hand. If you read this, the ring had 3. Find the doctor's wife. Wolfe sighed. Archie, pour another round. The game, confound it, is never over, listener. The brownstone door closes. A major falls. A boy rises. But a third shadow lingers. Who is the doctor's wife? Speculate below. The orchids, and we wait your theories. Chapter 7. Doctor's Wife. The brass button lay on Wolfe's desk blotter like a tiny accusing eye. Snow hissed against the brownstone windows. The radiator clanked to mournful accompaniment. It was December 23rd, 1947, 2 days before Christmas, and the city smelled of pine, chestnuts, and unfinished business. Wolfe read Greer's final note aloud, voice rumblingy as a cathedral organ. If you read this, the ring had 3. Find the doctor's wife. He set the paper down with the delicacy of a man handling nitroglycerin. Archie, the doctor is Elias Papadopoulos. His wife name. I flipped open Saul's dossier. Irini Papadopoulos, née Kalergis, 42. Athenian society before the war. Married Elias in 33, no children. Lives in Beyoğlu, above the clinic. Wolfe's eyebrows ascended. She was not on the ferry manifest, nor in the cistern, I said, but the button second one came from Istanbul. Postmarked yesterday. Someone mailed it here. Someone who knew we'd return. Wolfe pressed. The buzzer. Fritz appeared, apron dusted with flour. Fritz, the Times Atlas, and coffee for 4. I raised an eyebrow. 4? Saul, Lily, and the doctor summon him. Tonight, scene transition. Doorbell. Snow boots, stamp on the mat. By 9, the office was a council of war. Saul Panzer, snow melting off his fedora. Lily Rowan, mink stole sparkling with flakes, eyes bright as danger. Dr. Elias Papadopoulos, coat unbuttoned, satchel clutched like a life raft. He looked 10 years older than in the cistern grey at the temples, hands trembling. Wolfe wasted no ceremony. Doctor, your wife, where is she? Papadopoulos blinked. Irene? In Istanbul. She manages the clinic books. Why? Because Philip Greer's dying message names her the third member of the spy ring. She routed funds through pharmaceutical imports quinine, morphine, coded invoices. Your Audo button was her signature. You treated Greer. She sedated him first, ensured he boarded the ferry docile. The doctor's face strained to parchment. Impossible. Irene is delicate, shell-shocked from the occupation. She never leaves the apartment. Lily leaned forward. Delicate women kill, Doctor. I've seen it. Saul slid a cable across the desk. Customs Manifest, Port of New York, December 20th. Irene Papadopoulos, passenger on the SS Vulcania, Naples to Manhattan. Travelled as Mrs. Elias Carter. Your mother's maiden name, Papadopoulos, stared at the paper as if it were a death warrant. She came to surprise me for Christmas. Said she missed America Wolfe's lip curled. She missed the microfilm. The real One Hassan's delivery was intercepted at the embassy. She has the duplicate, the one Omega believed authentic. She mailed the button to lure us, to gauge if we suspected I opened the button under the lamp. Inside the hollow brass, a sliver of microfilm, no bigger than a fingernail. Wolfe exhaled a sound like a punctured tire. Archie, the address from the postmark Grand Central Locker 217, I read. Key enclosed, Papadopoulos stood swaying. I swear, I knew nothing. Irene handled the books, yes, but... Sit, Wolfe said. You are a dupe, not a defendant. Yet he turned to Saul. The locker. Retrieve the contents. Quietly, Saul was already buttoning his coat. Lily stubbed her cigarette. I'll go with him. I owe Philip a finale. Wolfe nodded. Archie remains. Doctor, you will telephone your wife now. Invite her here. Say you have a Christmas gift from Greer. She will come, Papadopoulos dialed with shaking fingers. The conversation was in Greek, soft, coaxing. He hung up, pale. She'll be here in an hour. Taxi from the Plaza Paws 3 beats. Clock ticks like a bomb. Irene Papadopoulos arrived at 10:47, snow on her fur collar, eyes dark and ancient as the cistern Medusas. She carried a small valise Hermes, pre-war. Her English was perfect, Athens finishing school. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice honey over broken glass. My husband says, you have something for me, Wolfe, gestured to the red leather chair. Madam, sit. The gift is truth. He placed the hollow button on the desk. Irene's pupils dilated. Greer's last note, Wolfe continued. You were the architect. Your husband, the unwitting courier. Colonel Oltan the muscle. Malika the blade. Omega the fence. You sedated Greer with scopolamine prescribed for malaria tremors. He boarded the ferry compliant. Melike stabbed him at 0620. You watched from the upper deck, veiled as a tourist. The duplicate film your insurance was mailed to yourself here. In the button, Irene's smile was winter. Fairy tales Saul entered quietly, Lily behind him. He laid a second valise identical on the desk. Grand Central Locker 217, he said, duplicate film, coded ledgers, $47,000 in bearer bonds. And this, he produced a Yemeni dagger third blade, blood long cleaned. Irene's composure cracked. Elias, you fool, the doctor recoiled. Irene, no. Wolfe raised a hand. Madame, the scopolamine vial in your valise label from your clinic. Fingerprints will match the ferry railing. The bonds are traced to Soviet accounts in Zurich. Your husband's innocence is your only bargaining chip." She lunged for the valise. I intercepted, gentle but firm. Lily caught her wrist. "Easy, darling. The ferry's sailed." Irini sagged. It began as survival. The Nazis took everything. The Soviets offered restoration art, status, a future. Philip discovered the ledger. I had no choice. Wolfe's voice was soft steel. "Choice is the privilege of the living. You forfeited yours. The MP's waiting in the Hallanted at my nod." Irini was cuffed with the same silk cord once used on Melike. Papadopoulos wept silently. Wolfe addressed him. "Doctor, you return to Istanbul. The clinic continues under embassy supervision. Your wife faces Leavenworth. The orchids will bloom without her pause 4 beats. Snow falls thicker." Later, in the kitchen, Fritz served cocoa laced with rum. Lily toasted with her cup, to Philip, and to twins who stay in their own wombs. Saul pocketed his fee. The doctor was escorted to a hotel under guard. Flight booked for morning. Wolfe raised his glass Remia 47, decanted. To Archie, who crossed 2 continents for a button, I grinned. And to you, boss, who never left the chair. Outside, Christmas lights twinkled on the brownstone next door. Inside, the orchids slept, satisfied. The doorbell rang soft, almost hesitant, a final crimson envelope. Inside, a lock of black hair Melikes and a note in Irini's hand. The ring had 4, the boy knows. Hassan's laughter echoed from the guest room upstairs. Wolfe sighed, the sigh of a man who knows the game is eternal. "Archie, pour another round, and wake the boy." Dawn comes early for heroes. Dear listener, the brownstone glows warm. A wife unmasked, a doctor broken, but a 4th shadow and a boy's secret linger. Who is the final player? Speculate. Below, the orchids and the Bosphorus never sleep. Chapter 8. The boy who knew too much. The brownstone kitchen smelled of cocoa, rum, and midnight secrets. December 24th, 1947, Christmas Eve, and the radiator hissed like a conspirator. Hassan sat at the table, new pajamas too big, eyes wide as the Bosphorus. The lock of Malike's hair lay between us like a dark comma. Irini's note. The ring had 4, the boy knows. Rested beside it, Wolfe loomed in the doorway, yellow robe tented over his bulk, a fresh bottle of Remia in one fist. "Archie," he rumbled, "wake the household. Fritz, Saul, Lily, the doctor fetch him from the plaza." We end this before the bells of Trinity I was already dialing. By 01:30, the office was a tribunal. Fritz in apron, coffee steaming. Saul Panzer, coat still on, notebook open. Lily Rowan, silk robe over pajamas, cigarette glowing like a signal flare. Dr. Elias Papadopoulos, escorted by MPs, face hollowed by grief. Hassan centre stage, barefoot on the Bukhara rug, clutching the hair as if it might bite. Wolfe took his chair slow, deliberate. "Hassan," he began, voice soft as falling snow, "you lifted more than wallets on the Pashabache. You saw the 4th, speak the boy swallowed. I hid in the lifeboat's harp, fog thick. I saw the veiled Lady Melike argue with Mr. Greer. Then the doctor's wife Irini came from the upper deck. She gave Melike the dagger, said, 'Do it now, or the boy dies.'" Papadopoulos gasped. "Irini threatened a child." Hassan nodded. "Me, she knew I followed Melike. Said my mother sells fish at the quay if I talked, the nets would drag her up too." Lily's cigarette trembled. "The 4th?" Hassan's eyes flicked to the doctor. "Him, Dr. Elias. He held Mr. Greer's arm, pretended to help with malaria. Injected something. Mr. Greer went sleepy. Then Melike stabbed." The room froze. Wolfe's gaze pinned Papadopoulos. "Doctor!" The man's hands shook. I thought it was quinine." Irini prepared the syringe. said Philip requested it for pain. I never liar, Hassan said quietly. You whispered to Irene, the ring must stay hidden. I heard. Greek words. O kyklos prepeinamen e krimenos. Saul translated under his breath. The circle must stay hidden. Wolfe leaned forward. The ring, Irene mastermind, Alton twins muscle, Malika blade, you the pharmacist. The was your fraternity alpha omega the circle. You sedated Greer to ensure compliance. The button planted to mislead. The Hermelaike's trophy, mailed by you to taunt us Papadopoulos crumpled. Irene promised it was only funds. Smuggling medicine past the Soviets. I needed the money clinic debts, occupation fines. When Greer confronted us, she said one death saved hundreds. I injected, I thought sedative, not set up for murder. Hassan held up the lock. She cut this after, said, proof for the circle. Gave it to you, doctor. You kept it in your satchel. I opened the doctor's bag left in the hall. Inside a false bottom. The real microfilm third copy plus ledgers in Irene's hand, and the hair tied with red silk. Wolfe exhaled. Archie, the MPs the Marines entered. Papadopoulos did not resist. Tell Irene, he whispered as they cuffed him. The circle breaks. Lily stubbed her cigarette. 4 shadows. All court looked up. 5 we turned. The boy produced a final crimson envelope from his pyjama pocket. Postmarked Istanbul, yesterday. Inside, a ferry ticket stub, Pashabache, dated the murder dawn. And a child's drawing stick figures. Greer, Melike, Irene, the Altans, the doctor, and a small boy with a knife, labelled H. On the back, in Melike's handwriting, the boy was to be the 5th blade. He refused. Protect him. Wolfe's eyes softened a rare eclipse. Hassan, you were recruited? The boy nodded. Omega offered gold. Said stab the American, save my mother. I took the knife, but threw it overboard instead, hid. Watched whistled low. Kid's got steel raised his glass. To the 5th who chose conscience. Hassan, your visa is permanent. School starts January. The brownstone has a new room beamed. I will teach him Blanquette de Veau. Lily ruffled the boy's hair. And I'll teach him dancing. The foxtrot waits for no orphan pause 4 beats. Radiator-sized dawn crept pink over the snow. The MPs departed with Papadopoulos. Saul pocketed triple hazard pay. Lily kissed Hassan's forehead maternal, fierce, returned to his orchids. I poured the last of the Remia. Boss, I said, the ring broken. He sniffed a bloom. Rings reform, but this one is ash. The doorbell rang soft, final. A Western Union boy, cheeks red from cold. One last envelope white, no wax. Inside, a Christmas card, embassy seal. From Attaché Wade, ring closed. Stop all parties in custody. Stop Hassan awarded Medal of Freedom. Stop. Merry Christmas from the Bosphorus Wolf. Grunted, almost a laugh. Arcade, hang the wreath. The game rests. For now, epilogue upstairs. Hassan slept under a quilt Fritz had sewn from orchid fabric scraps. Downstairs, the office clock struck 6. Outside, carolers sang Silent Night in 4-part harmony. I raised my glass to the empty air, to Philip Greer, to the circle broken, to the boy who chose the light. Wolfe's voice drifted from the plant rooms, and to the orchids. They, at least, are innocent, dear listener, Christmas dawn breaks. 5 shadows caught, a boy reborn. The ferry sails into legend, but somewhere a 6th envelope waits. Speculate below. The brownstone doors are always open. Chapter 9. The 6th envelope. The brownstone slept under a blanket of Christmas snow. December 25th, 1947. 3:14 a.m. And the city's only sounds were the occasional taxi sloshing through slush and the faint jingle of a distant Salvation Army bell. I was in the office, feet on the desk, nursing the last inch of Remia 47, when the Doorbell gave one polite chime. Not the brash ring of a client in panic. The soft, deliberate note of someone who knew we'd answer. I opened to a boy, no older than Hassan, bundled in a navy peacoat 2 sizes too large. Face scrubbed, eyes ancient. In his mittened hand, a white envelope, no wax, no postmark. "For Mr. Wolfe," he said in careful English. "From the ferry." I took it. He vanished into the snow before I could ask his name. Wolfe descended the stairs in robe and slippers, hair tousled like a lion roused early. "Archie, at this hour. If it's carolers, pay them and send them to Lily." I handed him the envelope. He slit it with the gold letter opener, unfolded a single sheet of Shahir Hatler stationery, ferry company letterhead, water-stained. Read aloud, voice low, "Mr. Wolfe, the ring had 6. The 5th refused, the 6th delivers. Check the orchids." Captain Arslan Wolfe's eyes narrowed to slits. "Arslan, released on bail yesterday. Embassy pressure, Turkish sovereignty, confound it." We climbed to the plant rooms. The heat hit like Istanbul in July. The air was thick with vanilla citrus and the green breath of 10,000 orchids. Theodore Horstman, Wolfe's orchid nurse, was off for Christmas. The place was ours. Wolfe moved down the aisles with the precision of a bloodhound, fingers brushing pots. In the Cataleya bench, 3rd row, a hybrid labelled Nero Wolfe's Bosphorus bell, new, unnamed, had a bulb sliced open. Inside, a brass capsule, no bigger than a cigar tube. I unscrewed it. A roll of microfilm, 4th copy, and a ferry ticket stub, dated the murder dawn, punched at Karaköy Pier, the unscheduled stop. Lips moved silently. Then, "Archie, the telephone. Wake Saul. Wake the embassy. Wake the president, if necessary." Scene transition. Dawn light, pale gold through the glass roof. By 06 Rock, the plant rooms were a command centre. Saul Panzer, unshaven, coat over pyjamas. Attaché Harlan Wade, flown in on a military courier plane, still in trench coat. 2 FBI agents, grim and coffee-fortified. Hassan, wrapped in a blanket, eyes enormous. Lily Rowan, in slacks and fury, cigarette unlit, Wolfe's rule in the orchids. Wolfe held the capsule like a reliquary. "Captain Arslan," he announced, "was never accessory. He was the 6th. The delay at Karaköy, 3 minutes, was to board himself, disguised as a fishmonger. He took the real microfilm from Greer's pocket after the stabbing, replaced it with the duplicate Omega later retrieved. The ticket stub proves it." Wade examined the film under a portable viewer. "Jesus, this is the master, complete NATO Black Sea grid. If Moscow had this." Saul flipped pages. "Arslan's bank, Grand Cayman, received $100,000 yesterday. Release bond posted by a shell company in Izmir." Hassan spoke up. "I saw him, fish crate, on shoulder, smelled of mackerel." He whispered to Melike, "The circle closes." Then he vanished into the fog. Lily's voice was ice. "He played us all, even his own confession." Wolfe nodded. He allowed arrest to flush the copies. Irenes, Omegas, the twins, all decoys. This was the prize. He mailed the envelope via the boy, his grandson, I wager, to gloat. I asked the question, "Where is he now?" Radio crackled. "Port Authority, SS Ankara, sails at 08 Wushagel for Naples. Arslan booked passage under Kamal Bay. His mother's name." Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "Archie, Saul, we intercept. The orchids can wait." Pause 3. Beats. Snow turns to sleet against the panes. Pier 90 at 07:42. The Ankara loomed, gangway up, horns blaring. We arrived in Wade's staff car. Sirens silent. FBI agents fanned out. Arslan stood at the rail, captain's cap swapped for a fedora, fishmonger's coat over a camel hair suit. He saw us, smiled, raised a hand in mock salute. Wolfe bellowed up the ramp, voice carrying like a foghorn. "Captain Arslan, the circle closes. Here." Arslan laughed, stepped back, and slipped through a service hatch. I vaulted the rail, Saul behind me. Decks slick with sleet, passengers scattering. We cornered him in the engine room, heat oil the throb of diesels. He held a flare gun, pointed at a fuel line. "One spark," he shouted, "and we all joined the fishes." Saul circled left. I went right. Wolfe's voice drifted down the companionway. "Captain, your grandson waits ashore. Hassan, he chose conscience. Will you choose fire?" Arslan hesitated. I lunged. The flare gun clattered. Saul cuffed him. In his pocket, the orchid capsule, empty. The film was taped under the engine room logbook. Wade took custody. "Extradition to Turkey, life on Imrali Island, no parole." Arslan spat. "The Bosphorus forgives. America does not." Pause 4 beats. Ship's horn moans. Back at the brownstone by noon, Christmas dinner waited. Goose, chestnut stuffing, Fritz's triumphant bouche de Noël. Hassan wore a paper crown from a cracker, eyes shining. Lily poured eggnog, Saul carved. Wolfe raised his glass. Remier 49, a gift from the embassy. To the 6th, who sailed too far. To the boy who stayed. To the circle, shattered, I clinked. And to the orchids, they hid the truth. Hassan grinned. "I will name a hybrid after Mr. Wolfe. Nero Wolfe's Justice." Almost blushed. The doorbell did not ring again. Epilogue. Upstairs, the Bosphorus bell bloomed. Scarlet lips, golden throat. Downstairs, the office clock struck 12. Outside, church bells pealed across the snow. I hung the wreath higher. The game, for once, was over. Dear listener, Christmas bells ring, 6 shadows caught, a captain chained, a boy crowned. The ferry rests in legend, but somewhere, a 7th envelope yellows in a locker. Speculate below. The brownstone and the Bosphorus sleep. For now. Chapter 10. The 7th envelope. Snow fell in thick silent curtains over West 35th Street as the clock in the office struck midnight on December 31st, 1947. The brownstone was quiet for the first time in weeks. No MPs, no cables, no crimson envelopes. Only the low crackle of the fire and the faint perfume of orchids drifting down from the plant rooms. Wolfe sat in his custom chair, a fresh bottle of Remier 53 open, glass half raised in a private toast to the dying year. I leaned against the desk, tie loosened, feet aching from a day of wrapping up loose ends. Arslan extradited, Irini en route to Leavenworth, the Altans in separate cells, Melike facing a Turkish tribunal. Omega vanished into the Aegean night. Hassan slept upstairs, dreaming of Horace Mann and foxtrots with Lily. The ring, 6 strong, had been broken, the microfilm locked in a State Department vault, and the Bosphorus Ferry scrubbed clean of blood and secrets. Yet the doorbell rang, once, soft as a heartbeat. I opened to find no boy, no messenger, only a plain manila envelope wedged under the mat. No stamp, no wax, the paper heavy with damp. Inside, a single brass ferry token, Shehir Hatlerer embossed, and a folded sheet of onion skin typed in perfect English. Wolfe took it, adjusted his lamp, and read aloud in a voice that turned the room colder than the snow outside. "Mr. Wolfe, the ring had 7. The 6th sailed. The 7th writes, 'The film you hold is blank. The real grid is in the boy's memory. He recites it nightly. Protect him or trade him. Midnight, New Year's Day, Grand Central, clock, come alone.'" The ferryman Wolfe's glass paused halfway to his lips. Confound it! The ferryman, a pseudonym, the token, valid for one crossing, any line, any year. A promise or a threat? I checked the envelope again. No prints, no scent, only a faint trace of diesel and salt. The film, blank. Wade swore it was the master. Wade is a diplomat, Wolfe said. Diplomats swear to many things. He pressed the buzzer. Fritz appeared, apron swapped for a robe. Fritz, rouse Hassan, gently, and wake Saul. Tell him to bring Ori and Fred. We have a rendezvous. Hassan padded in, hair tousled, eyes wide but unafraid. I dreamed numbers, he said without prompting. Lines on a map, ports, ships. Mr. Greer whispered them to me on the ferry. Said if anything happened, remember for America. Wolfe's gaze softened a fraction. Recite! The boy closed his eyes. Soviet fleet, Sevastopol, 12 destroyers, 6 submarines, grid 4133 north, 3330 east. NATO counter, Varna, 8 frigates, grid 4312 north, 2754 east. Troop strength. He rattled off coordinate states codes like a human cipher machine. Saul arrived with Ori Cather and Fred Durkin, coats dusted, with snow. Lily followed, mink over pyjamas, revolver in her pocket. If anyone touches that child, she said, they answer to me. Wolfe issued orders like a general. Saul, Ori, Grand Central, plain clothes, north balcony. Fred, information booth. Lily, south balcony with Hassan, disguised. Archie and I take the clock. No badges, no guns drawn unless fired upon. The ferryman wants the boy. We give him a choice. Grand Central at 11:47 p.m. was a cathedral of marble and motion. Soldiers on leave. Couples kissing under the celestial ceiling. The great clock ticking toward 1948. We fanned out. Hassan, in a newsboy cap and oversized coat, clung to Lily's hand near the oyster bar, pretending to read a comic. I stood beneath the four-faced clock, collar up, hands in pockets. Wolfe loomed beside me, immovable as the terminal itself. At 11:59, a man in a naval peacoat approached. Tall, scarred, one eye milky. Not Arslan, not Omega, a new face. He carried a ferry token identical to the one in my pocket. Wolfe, he said, voice low, accent Black Sea. The boy, now, or the grid goes to Moscow by dawn. Wolfe's reply was silk over steel. The boy is American soil. The grid is in his head, and in the vault. Your film was blank because Greer fed you decoys. The real data died with him, except what the child memorized. Harm him, and the information dies with him. Forever. The ferryman's good eye flicked to Hassan, 50 feet away, laughing at Lily's joke. Then we trade. The boy for safe passage. One ferry ticket to anywhere. I stepped forward. No deal. You walk or you don't walk. He smiled. Cold, professional. Then we all lose. Midnight struck. The crowd roared, Happy New Year! Balloons fell. Confetti blinded. In the chaos, the ferryman moved, fast toward Hassan. Dropped from the balcony, tackled him. Ori pinned his arms. Fred cuffed him with a clatter lost in the cheers. Wolfe's voice cut through the din. The seventh was always the courier. You carried the blank film, believed it real. The ring ends with you. The ferryman spat blood. There is no end, only crossings. FBI agents, Wade's men, hidden in the throng, took custody. The token in his pocket matched the one mailed to us. The scar was from a Yemeni blade, Millie Kay's, years ago. He was her brother, the silent partner who ferried secrets in fish crates. Pause for, beats, cheers fade to echoes. Back at the brownstone by 02 Sulchur 1948, Fritz served champagne and œufs sans cocotte. Hassan recited the grid one last time. Saul transcribed it onto State Department forms. The boy would testify in closed session protected for life. Wolfe raised his glass. To Philip Greer, who trusted a child. To Hassan, who kept the faith. To the ferryman, who crossed his last strait. Lily kissed the boy's forehead. To New Year's, I clinked, and to no more envelopes. The doorbell. Did not ring. January 1st. Dawn. The snow stopped. The orchids bloomed scarlet and gold. Hassan's new hybrid, Nero Wolfe's Justice, opened its first flower. Wolfe stood in the plant rooms, glass in hand. Archie, the game is over, until the next telegram. I hung a new brass plate by the door. Hassan Goodwin, Junior Associate. Outside, the city woke to 1948, clean, cold, and for one brief morning, secret-free. Dear listener, New Year dawns. 7 shadows caught. A boy crowned guardian of empires. The ferry rests in dry dock. But somewhere, an 8th token glints in the tide. Speculate below. The brownstone doors are locked.